WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. Lots of stories in the big city. We've been telling Muhammad Ali memoirs, remembrances, criticism, praise. We've been doing that all week, as well as watching the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals that look like they may be ending a little too soon and with the wrong team winning for my taste, especially on the hockey side. I got a guy here from a hockey country and a hockey land. He is north of the border of Vancouver, stranded now in Toronto, where they're trying to play a better brand of baseball. He covers baseball for Yahoo CA Sports and Canadian style up there, and you can follow his journey out on Twitter at his name, which is Israel Fehr. He's one of our defending champions. We welcome him back onto the program from the Great White North, where the Blue Jays are waiting to make their run, perhaps, right, Israel? I mean, I know the Orioles coming up there this weekend. I expected a better offseason from the Blue Jays, and I don't know how the fan base feels about it, but I felt like they could have augmented, and now we got a nice little log jam in the AL East, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, man.
It's certainly a situation, I think, here with this Blue Jays team that in the off season, I believe the fan base was a little bit underwhelmed. Especially, you see David Price going to the Boston Red Sox, and they really stayed status quo as far as the lineup was concerned. Really, the big move was keeping Marco Estrada, who's been great for them, and then signing Jay Happ as well, who had been here for a while before being traded, and then coming back here as a free agent.
Yeah, he was cheaper the first time, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you're looking at a team here that is the defending AL East champion for the first time in over 20 years, and they've got their work cut out for them, especially the way that they've started this season. The Red Sox and the Orioles are going to be in the thick of things, and last year, really, even at this point, I think we knew that the Yankees were the team that were at the top of the division anyway, but didn't really inspire much confidence, and now it appears that the AL East, while maybe not quite as strong as it was just a couple years ago, is going to be at least more competitive.
It is fascinating with these young players. So many of the young bats in baseball have kind of worked out. And then there are the Marcus Stromans out there and, Yordano Venturas who, we thought maybe making that move to the next level. I mean, even in Houston with Keuchel, so many of these guys looked and flashed like, well, they're going to be something. And meanwhile, Estrada and Sanchez have been pretty much right on time for the Blue Jays. I mean, I don't think you could hope for any more out of those two guys at this point, right?
Really, the rotation has kept this team in it. Last year, it was all about the offense. They led the league in runs by a considerable margin. Josh Donaldson, MVP. We knew that Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion were big-time run producers in the middle of that lineup, but so far it's been the pitching. It's been Aaron Sanchez and Marco Estrada and Jay Happ. And really the disappointment so far in the rotation has been Marcus Stroman. He's a guy that, as you said, Nestor, has flashed some star potential, but the truth is, going into this season when he was going to be the ace of this team, he only had 20 career regular season starts, so he never really dealt with that on-field adversity anyway. And right now, in a bit of a rut here for the Blue Jays, and they're looking for him to get out of it, because if they're going to be competing for this title race again this season, they need him to step up and be a guy that they can lean on every fifth day.
Look, I was there a year ago this month as part of my 30-30 tour. I went to 30 ballparks in 30 days. And when I landed in Toronto, it was on a Monday. They were playing the Red Sox. There was no one there. I sat behind the cage talking to Chris Colabello and Big Poppy for a long period of time there at the Skydome. And, 8 weeks later, here comes Tulowitzki. Here comes Price. Here come the fans. I mean, packing it in. It reminded me of 92, 93 when I used to go up there with the Orioles back in the day. And, there were 3.6, 3.8 million people going to Toronto Blue Jays games at that point in the early days of the Skydome. It felt like it was coming back on a little bit. It really kind of feels like their lack of commitment here in the offseason probably cost a lot of fans to say, well, if they're not as interested in loading up and being the best team, we're not going to come out to those numbers. I think it's – and they had the whole country, and you're a Canadian guy wearing the maple leaf up there. It felt like they were about to say, well, we're going to start spending money and we're going to be a factor in Major League Baseball the next 5 years. I don't think they took very good advantage of that opportunity that they created at the end of last year as a company, and I know they are corporate owned.
It was huge, and it was more than just this team not having been at that level for 20 years. The sports landscape up here, no Canadian hockey teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Raptors have had a little bit of success and made it to the Eastern Conference Final, but they don't have the draw that the Blue Jays do. They don't have the glory days that the Blue Jays do, and the country from coast to coast was waiting for a sports opportunity like this to jump on board. And those final 2.5 months for the Blue Jays, from the trade deadline until through the playoffs, was really incredible from coast to coast. And I do think that you're right. The fact that the team didn't necessarily go all in, or even further all in than they did after the big trade deadline that they had last year, didn't sit well with some people, and really took some of the wind out of the sails, some of the momentum that they'd built with that great run. And here they are a couple months into the season, and it feels like they're having to try to build that back up again. And the way that they're playing, which has been a little bit up and down, it's making that a little bit more difficult.
Okay, so for the next couple of months for the Blue Jays, and I know you have a Baltimorean running the franchise now, and Mark Shapiro as well, did a nice job in Cleveland all those years. What does it look like toward the trading deadline for a team that, as you said, has pitched better than you thought, could not hit any better than they hit last year? You had to know there was going to be a coming back to earth, even for Encarnacion, Donaldson, and Bautista, the big three. But more than that, Colabello not around now, Tulowitzki, it turns out that maybe he's toward the end, certainly closer to the end than the beginning for him, right?
Absolutely, and you're looking at a team here that has also dealt with some bullpen issues this year, and I think that the trade deadline, that's the area that they're going to have to continue to address. They made a trade with the Braves last week to bring in Jason Grilli, a guy that's had some success as a closer and was really pitching for an Atlanta team that wasn't going to go anywhere this year, and seems to have been re-energized a little bit by coming over to a team that appears can still be a contender, at least for the playoffs. So a team that's going to be in the discussion for some of those bullpen arms, but just really the trade market overall compared to last year doesn't have the star power that it did last year when we saw 2 or 3 aces and some big-time position players get moved. The market this year still hasn't been set, and this is a team that I think is going to have to hope that Troy Tulowitzki figures it out, and when he comes back from injury, he's a guy that can be at least closer to the guy that he was in Colorado all those years, and that Russell Martin, a guy that's been an all-star, who's been struggling mightily at the plate this year, can figure it out. And those big changes for the Blue Jays this year are probably going to have to come from within.
Israel Fehr covers all things Major League Baseball at Yahoo in Canada, as well as Big League Stu. He's up in Toronto. The Orioles, of course, there all weekend long. Some thoughts about the Orioles. I mean, you really don't just cover the Blue Jays. You cover the big leagues. And the Orioles were thought to perhaps be a cut below the other 4 teams during the offseason. And talk about sort of tumultuous offseasons. I mean, the Orioles waited to the end, wound up getting Davis, wound up bringing in Gallardo, losing Fowler, signing Alvarez. We called it the dumpster dive by Dan Duquette. Certainly at the end, it's been a mixed bag, certainly for the pitching, but they play like a beer league softball team. On any given night, they can hit 4 or 5 home runs and win a game.
They've got that power. You got Davis, you got Trumbo, you got Alvarez in there. But really, I think this team and the guy that excites fans across the major leagues has got to be Manny Machado. Just an unbelievable talent, and a guy that's been overshadowed by just how good Mike Trout's been, just how good Bryce Harper was last season. And really, other than the injuries, he's been doing this consistently since he came up. And he's the kind of guy that when the Orioles come to town, I think fans, at least fans that really know baseball, they want to see this guy play because they know terrific fielder, great hitter, and he's a guy that's really carrying that team offensively. You know that they've got a strong bullpen, and they're a team that at least they profile like a team that's going to stick around. They might have some ups and downs, but they look like they'll be able to stick around and compete with the Blue Jays, compete with the Red Sox as the division and as the season wears on.
Yeah, it is amazing with Machado to see this happen right before our eyes. And, 2 different years, 2 different injuries, coming back from all of it. Last year hitting 35 home runs. He might hit 40 this year. It's incredible.
He's a great player, a great talent. He's a guy that when I go out to the park, I love to watch him play. And a guy that really does bring that excitement, and a guy that I think if the Orioles stay in contention here will be getting some more national attention as for just how good he is. And it's hard to believe we're saying that about a guy that was a top draft pick, a top prospect, but just hasn't been getting the attention that I think he deserves. And he was my pick to be the batting champ this year in the American League, and so far his offensive numbers are up there with the best of them.
All right, so for the rest of the game in the sport, it really feels like the Cubs are, head and shoulders above everyone, at least for the regular season. We certainly have our own angst here, given Jake Arrieta's role in that. But the Cubs have been as good as advertised, and that's kind of hard to do. I mean, look at the Nationals last year, sort of collapsed under the weight of expectations. At least thus far, Madden's got, the Midas touch out there in Chicago so far this summer.
It's a great combination. They have that young talent. They've been able to build that pitching staff. Apologies to the fans in Baltimore that know the Jake Arrieta story. Have built a pitching staff with him as the ace and some veterans in John Lester and John Lackey right behind him. And really that lineup is as explosive as you're going to find in baseball. It's young and dynamic, and they've built a great team there, and Joe Madden seems to be the perfect guy to lead it. He's a guy that we saw what he could do in Tampa Bay with limited payroll and limited teams in many ways, and right here he's got a team that is as complete as you'll find in baseball, and so far so good. They are on the right track, and they are absolutely living up to those preseason expectations.
Israel, we're talking about the trading deadline and where it is on July 31st, and everybody's aware of that, right? I mean, anybody that's a baseball fan. But then you look and you see these deals happening even earlier, right? We have been talking about Shields a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, the Padres management got involved in saying some stuff negatively out in the press last week. But I find it fascinating. These deals get made in early June. They should have more value, especially if you're getting 8-10 more starts out of a pitcher than you would get if you bought him on July 31st.
It's massive, especially when you're talking about a starting pitcher, and then you're adding those starts. And if you're making a move for a guy, James Shields has not been the guy that we saw in the American League for the better part of a decade since signing in San Diego, but has had some decent stretches there over the first year and a half that he was there. And you're looking at a guy that if he's right and you have him for 4 to 6 more starts, that can absolutely be something that swings a division. And it's something that I do think will start to play a little bit more as far as seeing those kind of trades. But it's tough now with that second wild card. There are more teams that feel like they are in the playoff hunt and are probably less comfortable going into sell mode, where you have a handful, maybe 3 or 4 teams that know really after a month, okay, maybe we should be going into a sell mode. And the Padres fall in that category. You look at the Braves, Twins, teams that already to this point are out of it. But with that second wild card, you get a lot more hope and optimism, which is good for some fan bases, I would say. But for as far as the trade market is concerned, it does complicate things a little bit.
Yeah, we watched the Yankees play over the weekend, and there are rumors they might be sellers. That's an incredible statement, especially given for a quarter of a century now they've only been a buyer on July 31st.
It's a totally different dynamic, something that we're not used to. And the thing is, last year we saw this team stay in it. They had that division really up until the end of the season when the Blue Jays went on a crazy run to take it from them. And they end up in that wild card game, don't win it, and don't make any big moves in the offseason aside from trading for Aroldis Chapman. But they keep the lineup the same, really keep the rotation the same. And I think people even last year started to see, well, this team is aging. They've got big money for older players that while Alex Rodriguez and Mark Teixeira produced last year, that hasn't been the case so far this season. And they appear like a team that, which is, like you said, Nestor, crazy to stay for the Yankees, but a team that's waiting for the future, for their minor leaguers to come up. And that's something that we're not used to, but it does appear that it is maybe the new reality in baseball right now.
Israel Fehr covering all things Major League Baseball and Big League Stew up in Toronto. And you can follow his journey out on the internet. Israel like the country and Fehr like Donald, but you're not related. Let's make sure we say that, right?
No relation, nope.
Absolutely. Last thing for you, we're near Washington, and obviously, being in the Orioles space, we get the Masson games piped in here. What the Nationals have done and what Dusty Baker has done, it would be the best story in baseball if it weren't for the Cubs, right? I mean, the Nationals have bounced back. They've signed their star player. They still got to figure out Bryce Harper, but by and large, this was the year they were supposed to have last year.
Yep, it's crazy how it works like that. They come in last year as the big-time World Series favorite. Doesn't play out like that, and I looked at them. They were actually my World Series pick. Part of that reason just to change it up from everyone else picking the Cubs, but you look at a team with a strong front of the rotation, a lineup when Bryce Harper is going that can really produce, and a team that I think is still going to be in the conversation as far as trying to improve at the trade deadline. It's been a good story. I think you have to be happy for a guy like Dusty Baker, a baseball lifer who's been out of the game for a couple of years and gets his opportunity here. And so far, they are absolutely playing very well. They're playing some good ball, and they also look like a team that has the potential to improve a little bit here and get back into the playoffs and see if they can right some of the wrongs that happened the last couple of times they were in the postseason.
Yeah, I'm getting the vibe that if it's Nationals and Cubs, that's pretty good baseball in October. But, hey, I think the Mets are going to have something to say about it. Certainly the San Francisco Giants. And I think before it's over with, the Dodgers will have something to say about that.
It looks good. The National League those are kind of the markets that I think the league would like to see, and there's some talent there that the fans would like to see as well. And it looks like that there are some pretty complete teams there as well that could make for some really, really compelling series.
Well, you have a good summer up there in Toronto. Anybody that's from a country where Geddy Lee hails from can't be half bad, Israel Fehr.
My pleasure, Nestor. Good to talk to you.
Does Geddy still come to the games? They're off tour. Has he been at any Sky? I haven't seen him there recently.
He's still around. He'll still make his way. He's around. He likes. He loves the Blue Jays. He loves baseball. So it's always good to see him. And he does still makes quite a few appearances throughout the year.
Well, I'll be looking to snake him behind home plate this weekend when the Orioles are up there. All right.
Yeah. Hey. Cheers.
Keep the faith. There he goes, Israel Fehr. You can follow him out at Big League Stew as well as Yahoo CA up in Canada, covering all things Blue Jays as well as Major League Baseball. He is on Twitter, Israel Fehr, F-E-H-R, like Don Fehr, but as we said, no relation. He's happy about that as well. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn radio app. We even come in Canada, right? We're multi-country. I'm international out there. The morning newspaper hits your email inbox at 7 a.m. It's brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. And if there's any breaking news at all, some comings, some goings, Orioles sending guys up and down, you always get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That is powered up by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports. 2. Welcome back, WNST Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. We have been lamenting the loss of Muhammad Ali all week and had some great stories. You can check it all out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault. Still monitoring all things Orioles as they head off to Toronto this weekend. And, of course,